Hello and welcome to helpyourmath.com. In this video, we are going to look at converting between percents, decimals, and fractions. We're going to only look at straightforward conversions. In the next video, I'll go over some less straightforward conversions. Percents are all around us, sometimes in exciting ways like sales, yay, it's 20% off. But they can also be used to manipulate us. So we have to be very careful about the source. In any event, no matter what way they're being presented to us, if we need to use them in a math problem, then they must be converted to one of their equivalent forms, either a decimal or a fraction first, before we can proceed with the problem. So that's what we're going to look at today, is converting between these three different forms. Our first conversion will be from percent to decimal. Percent breaks up into per, meaning out of, and cent would be a suffix that means 100. So anytime we're talking about a percent, it means out of 100. 40% is 40 out of 100. So how do we convert from a percent to a decimal? We're going to divide the percentage by 100, or the shortcut is we move the decimal point 2 places to the left. So if we see the percent, we're going to go to the left. We're going to move away from the percent, 1, 2, 2 places. Those 2 places are just a shortcut for dividing by 100. So anytime we're converting from a percent to a decimal, it's always 2 decimal places. In our first example, we have 65%. I move the decimal point 2 places to the left. And 65% is the equivalent of 65 hundredths, or 0.65. 7%, I move it 2 places to the left. I have a gap there, so I'm going to fill a 0 in that gap. And the equivalent would be 0.07. Notice that when I'm writing the equivalent decimal, I do not include the percent sign. We drop the percent sign. We're doing that operation that is the per 100. 230%, we're going to go 2 places to the left, 1, 2. And that would be equivalent to 2.3, or 2 3/10. All right, next up, percent to fraction. How do we convert a percent to a fraction? We divide the percentage by 100 by putting the percent value over 100, and then we would simplify. And again, just like with decimals, once you convert a percent to one of its equivalent forms, you drop the percent sign. So we're going to take our p percent, and we will put that p over 100, and then we would simplify. So simplify means we're going to look for common factors. In our first example, we have 65%, so we'll take 65 and we'll put it over 100, dropping the percent sign. From here, 100, I guess in percents we're only dealing with 100, so we want to check for being able to simplify by 2s and 5s, factors of 2s and 5s. I recognize that 65 is divisible by 5, so we're going to divide both 65 and 100 by 5. When I divide by the same amount, I'm really not changing the value of the number. I'm just changing the numerator and the denominator, but maintaining the value that it is. So it'll still be 65%. It's just going to be a simplified fraction. 65 divided by 5 is 13. 100 divided by 5 is 20. And so 13 over 20 would be our fractional equivalent of 65%. Next, we have 7%. So to convert to a fraction, we take the 7 and we put it per 100. Then I would try to simplify, but that's as simplified as it can get, so we would keep it 7 over 100. 230%, I'm going to take that 230 and I'm going to put it over 100. And then I want to try to simplify. So I recognize they both end in 0. You might remember a shortcut for ending in 0. We can divide by 10 over 10. When I divide the numerator by 10, I get 23. When I divide 100 by 10, I get 10. And we have 23 over 10, which I'll leave as my final answer. So that was converting out of percent form, which is the most common thing we're going to have to do. Next up, we're going to look at converting decimals to percents. How do we do that? Well, we're going to multiply the decimal that we're given by 100, and then we're going to put in a percent sign. The shorthand for this is we move the decimal point 2 places to the right, and when we're converting it into a percent, we want to include the percent sign. So 0.7 0.75, we multiply by 100, we move it 2 places over. 0.75 would be 75%. 0.04, we move the decimal point 2 places to the right, and we get 4%. 0.031, to convert to a percent, we multiply 2 places to the right. Notice there's still a decimal in percent form, and that's okay. Disappeared on me. And we get 31%. So those would be the conversions from decimals into their equivalent percent form. Next up, let's look at fraction to percent. To convert a fraction to its equivalent percent, we're going to multiply the fraction by 100%. Since it is a fraction, we might put 100% over 1 just to help us out. We'll simplify before we multiply, or at least I like to simplify before we multiply, and then we'll write the equivalent percent. 4 over 5, we're going to multiply by 100%, and since we have a fraction, I'll turn 100% into a fraction by putting it over 1. I'm going to simplify. 5 goes into itself once. It goes into 120 times, so I divided a factor of 5 out of the numerator and the denominator. Now that the denominator is all ones, I'm going to multiply straight across. 4 times 20 is 80, and then 1 over 1 would just be 80%. 11 over 25, I'm going to multiply by 100%, or 100% over 1. I want to simplify before I multiply. I tend to do this. If you multiply first and simplify second, that's totally fine. 25 goes into itself once. 25 goes into 104 times. Now the denominator is all ones. I'm going to multiply straight across the numerator. 11 times 4 is 44%. And again, it would be 44% over 1. We don't need the over 1. 17 over 10, I'm going to multiply by 100% over 1. I can simplify. 10 goes into itself once. It goes into 100% 10 times. Multiplying straight across, 17 times 10 is 170%. I yet again have denominators of ones, so I'll drop the denominator. And next on the list, we're going to look at converting fractions to decimals. So here we're not using percents at all. To convert a fraction to its equivalent decimal, we divide the numerator by its denominator. You may need to round your answer, and my rule of thumb is that if it's not specified, round to the nearest hundredth. You might also be able to use a calculator for these, so you might want to have a calculator handy. I'll go through them by hand, but check with your instructor to see if you can use a calculator. In the calculator, you're always going to do numerator divided by denominator. My first example, I have 4 over 25. So for that division, that's 25 out of the house, 4 into the house, and I'm going to add some decimal places here. I'll do 3 just in case I need them. Once I add a decimal point in the dividend, I move it straight up to the quotient, and now I'll start dividing. 25 goes into 4 0 whole times, so I'll skip that one. 25 goes into 41 time. 40 minus 25 is 15. Bring down the next 0. Looks like I have too many zeros because 25 will go into 150 exactly 6 times, giving me a final decimal. See, I'm going to do this and it's going to just turn to 0. All done. Terminating decimal, hooray. We end up with 0.16. So 4 out of 25, the equivalent decimal is 0.16 or 16 hundredths. 41 over 50, I'll set up my little house. 50 goes out of the house. 41 goes in the house. I'll add some decimal places and I'll work straight up. 50 goes into 41 0 times. 50 goes into 410 8 times. 8 times 50 is 400, so I'll subtract that from 410, leaving behind 10. Bring down the next place, the 0. 50 goes into 100 twice, and it goes in exactly twice, so we're all done here. Hooray! So 41 out of 50 is the equivalent decimal of 82 hundredths, or 0.82. How about 17 over 7? 17 over 7, so 7 goes out of the house. 17 goes into the house. I think this one is going to be a repeating, so I'm going to set up 3 zeros just to give me that thousandths place so I know how to round the hundredths place. I'll bring the decimal point straight up. 7 goes into 17 2 whole times. Hey, we have a whole number. Minus 14. 17 minus 14 is 3. Bring down the 0. 7 goes into 34 whole times, minus 28. I have 2 left over, bring down the 2. Let's see, 7 goes into 20 twice, minus 14. 20 minus 14, I'll put it up here so we can see it, would be 6. Bring down this 0. 7 goes into 67, 8 whole times, minus 56. And this will keep going. This is going to be a repeating decimal. I'm just going to use that 8. So the 8 in the thousandths place tells the 2 in the hundredths place to bump up. Since this one isn't truly equal, I do squiggly equals, or is about, approximately, and it's approximately 2.43. So 17 over 7 is approximately 2.43. And the final one, are you still with me? You're doing great. We are looking at converting decimals to their equivalent fractions. In order to do that, we count the least place of the decimal, and we're going to assume that all decimals here will terminate. That's going to be the power of 10 that's in the denominator, and then we'll simplify if possible. 0.3, so the 3 is in the tenths place. That would be 3 over 10, which cannot be simplified. So 3/10 or 0.3 is the same as 3 out of 10. 0.016 tenths, hundredths, thousandths. The least place, the 6 is in the least place, and it's in the thousandths place. So we would write this as 16 over 1,000. This can be simplified. I see that they're both even. They're also both divisible by 4. They're also both divisible by 8. If you don't recognize that they're both divisible by 8 and you simplify first by 2 or 4, that's fine. You'll just simplify more than once. So if you divide by 2 over 2, you would end up with 8 over 500, both of which are still even, and you'll want to simplify again. I'm going to go straight to the good stuff, and I'm going to divide both by 8 just to do this in one step. 16 divided by 8 is 2, and 100 divided by 8 is, I think it's 125. I'm going to go with 125. 125. So 0.016 or 16 hundredths is the same as 2 divided by 125. And our last example, we have 1.04. This will be 1 is in the ones place, tenths, hundredths. So we're going to write this as 104 over 100 because the 4 was in the hundredths place. Notice, just like with the two examples previously, we just dropped the decimal point. This time there happened to be a whole number in front of it. That's fine. We just leave that there. 104 and 100 are both divisible by 4, so I'll divide these both by 4. Or again, I could have divided by 2 twice, giving me 51 over 50. So these were the conversions between decimals, percents, and fractions. Thank you for stopping by.